What's going on, everybody? We are back. Episode number 183 of the club. I'm trying to find a way around the sign of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking UFC 303. We got a rematch. Alex Pereira, Anthony Smith. Pretty fun main card, decent undercard. I think a decent card to talk about bet-wise. And yeah, it's a pay-per-view. We brought in a guest, and he is one of the members of our partner, which is Fight Numbers, by the way. And for a 30% discount on a 1-month subscription, use the promo code CLUB. And we brought him in here so you could see what you're getting with Fight Numbers. We got my man, Evan D. Evan, what's going on, man?
Hey, John. Hey, Legs. Thanks for having me. So your promo that you guys run is 30% off, right?
Yeah.
We have a 30.3% promo running this week for UFC 303. John Kelly made me plug it, but honestly, use the Club and Sub promo because these guys are good friends of the Fight Number squad and just good friends in general. So use their shit if you want to subscribe. But I'm happy to, break down these fights with you guys. Let's go.
Yep.
Wags, how are you doing today?
Good. Excited for the card. We talked about it a little bit before we got on here, but yeah, excited to chop into it.
Yeah, so let's just jump right in right away. We got first fight of the night. Ricky Simone, he's taking on Vinicius Oliveira, lock dog. Current price, Ricky minus 240. The comeback on Oliveira plus 205. Evan, if I'm not mistaken, I think you have an opinion here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I it's not a strong opinion. I did click Oliveira at plus 195. I understand stylistically this probably doesn't look like a great fight for him. It's definitely kind of a buy low fight on Ricky Simone, but he's pretty fucking chalky for a guy who's lost 2 in a row, who is only 31 years old. He's a phenomenal athlete, great wrestler. I think he needs to grapple for 15 minutes here. I know that maybe a sub is live. He does get that arm triangle choke a lot. I think he's a bit chinny. I'm almost also interested in the under here. So the under is interesting to me because Oliveira is a bit chinny as well. And Ricky Simone has a little power in his right hand. So I don't know. I might, soft hedge with the under 2.5 minus 120. Fight ends inside the distance minus 150. I don't know. This is what I've been how I've been getting in trouble lately is with some soft hedging. I did click Oliveira at plus 195. I think he's really fucking good. He's a huge bantamweight. Obviously, he struggled in his UFC debut against Sopaj with some of the offensive wrestling. Sopaj is fucking good. He's a phenomenal athlete. And then the dude took the fight on short notice, gassed out, and Oliveira killed him in round 3 with that flying knee. I just think he's violent as fuck. And with the scoring criteria the way it is now, I just think I don't think Simone wants to stand with him. Obviously, I think we would agree there. Does he have to stand with him? Probably not. I don't know. I just saw a bit of value at plus 195, so I entered in for a small play. But I think Simone surely should be favored. I don't know if minus 250, where he's sitting at in some spots now, is a little much. What do you guys think?
Lags, what are your thoughts?
Well, I do echo your thoughts on the under, though, because I do think there's a ton of finishing equity on both sides. But I do think Ricky should be a pretty sizable favorite because I do think that the wrestling and top control will make the huge difference. Like, as you mentioned a little bit, Sopaj did end up gassing in that fight. I think Ricky's got solid cardio, should be able to ground him, and honestly should be able to find a finish, in my opinion. So I think the under, pick him, and even the doesn't go at minus 150, I think that's a good spot.
Yeah, I think the under is interesting. What's bothering me is when I saw the line initially earlier in the week, I was kind of like, maybe I'll lay the Ricky chalk here. My kind of concern, though, is I feel like Ricky over his last 5 to 8 fights has been a lot less proactive about grappling than he had been earlier in his career. I understand all it takes about control, and they're probably true, but I also think if Ricky gets his hands locked and decides that he wants to just mat return Oliveira over and over, I don't really think there's a whole lot Oliveira is going to be able to do about that. But, to the point that I just made, it's he only attempted 9 takedowns over 25 minutes with Song Yadong. If you're not coming out and shooting from minute 1 against Song, what are you doing? Now when he was horribly outgunned, even the Batista fight, he kind of waited until he was pretty fucked up already to start wrestling and aggressively in that fight. So yeah, it's a concern for me. I think he can hang on the feet, but Evan mentioned it, you mentioned it. I'd be remiss not to say that Ricky's had his fair share of chin issues in the past. The guy's been hurt a bunch. He's been finished by strikes a few times. And this is men's 135, not men's 185. So like that was enough for me to kind of stay away from the money line. I wanted to play sub, but like plus 290, that's not very attractive to me. 26,
especially when he can KO him standing too.
I doubt Ricky's KOing him standing personally, but
Or
I mean, he could.
Yeah.
He could. I just feel like sub was the way, but it's like I was hoping we'd see something like we got a couple years ago where he was like plus 600 to sub Gaetano Pirello, and like we could play that. But I don't really have much interest at plus 290. But yeah, I lean the Ricky side. I do think Ricky should win this fight, but he certainly has the mental capacity to make it sweatier than it needs to be. Moving on, though, we got Ray Seruya making his UFC debut, taking on poor Carlos Hernandez, who they just like keep matching up with grapplers, man, like every fight. Legs, current price on Seruya is minus 500. The comeback on Hernandez, plus 375. Do you have a strong opinion here?
I don't. I mean, I think Seruya is certainly pretty green. I mean, the guy pretty much has no striking to speak of. I mean, you hardly see it in his fights. The guy's pretty much wrestle first. And the guy's got solid wrestling, solid grappling, and I think that should be enough here. I think he has large advantages in both of those areas against Carlos Hernandez. But yeah, I guess more so further down the line in flyweight, he needs to shore up that striking, shore up just the combination of both the striking and mixing in with the grappling because he shoots his takedowns from pretty far out. But I think he should probably find a finish here against Carlos.
Yeah, I really don't think so, to be honest.
All right.
I like the over a bit. I like the GTD here around plus 180. And honestly, I like Carlos Hernandez in this fight. I guess, look, obviously we've seen Carlos get subbed a few times. And I think it's easy to kind of just default back to Ray Seruya is a grappler who's going to pursue it aggressively. And Carlos Hernandez has been subbed by grapplers. But I mean, Alan Nascimento, Tatsuro Taira, I really don't think Seruya is anywhere near that level. I think he's a decent wrestler. He's a good athlete. He's only 22, so I think he's going to get better, and I can see the talent. But the guy's got no volume on the feet. He's not much of a striker. I think his gas is potentially a bit suspect. Like his volume of wrestling slowed down dramatically in round 2 against Mark Climaco. And while like he could get a back take and a body triangle, I don't think he's nearly as slick as jumping to the back against someone like Hernandez who's going to try to get up urgently in this fight. And we saw Daniel Perez, who's like a legit black belt, and he got to Hernandez's back and couldn't consolidate position there. I don't think Seruya is a better submission grappler than Daniel Perez is. And on the feet, I think Carlos Hernandez is a much better striker. So I see why people like Seruya. Great process, very good athlete, good wrestler if he gets in close. But I do think it's going – Seruya, in my view, is either going to insta-tap him like very, very quickly, or this is going to get super sweaty and be a very, very close fight that goes the distance. I trust Hernandez's experience more. I think the grappling upside of Seruya is being overrated based on the guys that Hernandez has fought. So, yeah, I mean, I'll be betting Hernandez here. I like goes the distance. I'm basically fading Ray Seruya ITD, so we'll see how that goes. What do you think, Evan?
No, John, I'm with you. I don't know if I have the balls to take a pre-fight position, but I definitely think Hernandez live could be a really good look. I love Carlos Hernandez. I love his boxing. I think he's gritty, really, really scrappy guy, scrambles well, ton of experience, to your point. They're obviously making this fight, and giving Hernandez another grappler to push this Japanese 21-year-old kid, try to hype up another like phenom type with some, Olympic whatever Japanese wrestling accolades. It's tough to really, I just want to see around. I want to see around, or I want to see a few minutes. And then if Hernandez is okay, it's like time to enter, because you'll get like plus 500, plus 600. These crazy wide lines just like balloon for no reason half the time in round 1. And I definitely favor Hernandez if this fight gets extended and he's having success in scrambling out of positions. I think he's going to piece him up on the feet. So I definitely think he's live. It's definitely dogger pass, and I definitely like the overs rather than the unders. I think I'll probably just wait to see a few minutes. Yeah,
that's reasonable. Seruya's best round's going to be early, so I get it. We'll see. I do like the overs a lot here. Moving on, though, we have a what a fight. Andre Arlovski, 45 years old, taking on Martin Budai. Current price, Budai minus 250. The comeback on Arlovski plus 210. Evan, are you interested in the ancient
No.
one?
No, pass. Just pass. Yeah.
I'm kind of more of agreement with Evan as well. I mean, Budai on the feet, throws pretty hard, throws with intent, he's got good power, and while he doesn't mix in wrestling a ton, I think his clinch strikes and just clinch grappling in general, I think will be enough here. I mean, it's tough to trust Arlovski at this age.
Yeah, I mean, Budai sucks. And like, if it had Arlovski
Yeah.
at 40, I'd happily bet him at plus 200 here, but he's 45. And I feel like the chances he goes over a cliff go exponentially up with each passing fight that happens. So I kind of think Arlovski's best case is choppy, low volume split decision. Whereas the guy's durability is clearly going. I can easily imagine him getting knocked out. Can easily imagine him getting clinched for 15 minutes. And the couple times this guy has ended up on bottom lately, he's just immediately tapped for like no hooks in. So I can't get there. I think it's funny because it got down to minus 204 today. And I saw it for a second. I was like, that's interesting. Like I might even bet Budai here. And then it just got slammed back to minus 250. But yeah, I mean, can't bet Andre Arlovski at this juncture. Moving on. I'm going to leave it with Evan here, though, because I am curious on your take on this fight. It's a spicy one on MMA Twitter this week. We got Jillian, the Savage Robertson, minus 185. The comeback on the Karate Hottie, Michelle Waterson, plus 160. What are your thoughts here?
Interesting fight. And I've been giving this fight a lot of thought, more than I'd like to admit. It's, for me, definitely Waterson or pass. I don't have any action on this fight. I'm kind of, so the overs are lined in an interesting way, right? The over 2.5 is minus 180. Goes the distance is minus 140. So the market's expecting this fight to go the distance. Whereas at that logic, minus 185, minus 190 on Jillian doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I think I'd rather play her by sub unless there's or ITD. I don't know. I think that Waterson, her metrics would tell you that she has some pretty sneaky takedown defense. And obviously Jillian's not the most physical girl in the world. She's not the best wrestler in the world. And she's done pretty well down at strawweight. Now, Michelle Waterson is 38 years old. She's a brown belt. She's been fighting forever. She does pretty well to get to full guard and stays pretty safe on the ground. She's losing a lot of these fights because she's just getting the shit beat out of her on the feet because she's like a little midget who would otherwise probably fight at atom weight. But Robertson, she can't strike, really. She's working on her boxing and stuff, but I think this fight sucks. I think it's going to suck to watch. I think the Karate Hottie is just going to be 5 feet away at all times, throwing side kicks and front kicks but also Jillian, I don't think she's really going to sit out there either. So it is very binary in the sense that Jillian's going to close the distance. And it's not like Michelle's this big power threat to deter her from doing that. Can Jillian drag her to the ground? I think probably once or twice, in which case I think she probably wins a close decision, Jillian. I don't know if she's going to sub her. I think Michelle's probably good enough to stay safe on the mat. So I think the most likely outcome is honestly Jillian by decision. Maybe I'll look at some split props or something like that. I don't know, though. At the money line, just given the fight is favored to go the distance, to me it's Michelle or pass. But I don't know. Curious to hear what you guys think.
Lags, what are your thoughts, brother?
Don't have a strong take on it to that degree, but you asking about it, I should say. But I think the line's more or less right with Jillian being 60-ish%. I think on the feet, it's actually much closer. Even though her striking's not that great, I don't expect Michelle to blow her out volume wise or anything like that. So I expect it to be pretty close on the feet. And I think Jillian can land those takedowns and control her.
Yeah, I thought Evan did a good job breaking the fight down. I think, it's obviously Waterson or pass, and I've given some thought to betting the Waterson side here. My biggest concern with the side is it's just Waterson has no margins in almost any fight. How many women has Waterson gone out there and, really dominated over 15? It just doesn't happen. The fight that I've seen most frequently referenced this week with respect to this one is Carla Esparza. But what no one's talking about is she lost that fight in a striking fight with Carla Esparza by split decision. Now, she did a good job avoiding the pocket with Carla and not getting taken down, but she did so little that Carla was able to kind of just jank a decision off a couple head strikes. And that kind of concerns me. I'm with Evan. I think Jillian's going to come forward, but I could see Michelle doing that And we almost saw this happen with Jillian and Tabitha Ricci a couple fights ago, where Jillian ended up couldn't get her down and ended up being competitive striking. I can imagine it here. On top of which, Waterson's an old lady. And to Evan's point, it's like, if you project Jillian to get a takedown or two against 39-year-old Michelle Waterson with her top game, it's really hard to feel comfortable about Waterson at plus 160. Like plus 200, plus 200, I could easily, make the case for Waterson there. But at like 40%, I just feel like Robertson has more paths to winning this fight dominantly, and I don't really see a path to Michelle Waterson winning this fight dominantly. So I guess it could happen if she just ends up being too physical, but I've seen Jillian take down physical women before. So yeah, I'm probably going to pass. If it keeps widening, I'll get in on Waterson, but the lack of margins really kind of scare me in this fight. Moving on though. Lags, going to throw it to you here. We have the widest men's favorite I can remember in the UFC.
Bo Nickel.
Yeah, Bo Nickel is the other one. And I'm sure there were some old Russian cards back in the day where we probably had a couple minus 2,000s out there. But we got Peyton Talbot, currently minus 1,800, taking on Giannis Gamori. The comeback on Gamori is plus 900. Lags, is Talbot going to run through him? Are there any props on this fight you kind of like?
Tough to really be confident on a lot of props, really. I will say I don't think he's going to run through him, but the over 1.5's minus 205 now.
Oh, fuck, really?
Yeah. That's absolutely got smoked. So I think the only way you would approach it is like a Talbot. I think personally he finishes him in the second round. Not that I think there's any value on those kind of props in this type of fight, but it's a complete pass.
Well, I'm like devastated that you just said that because I was literally about to tease over GTD here and Talbot decision. I guess. Look, I don't have a fight breakdown to give you. He's minus 1,800. We all know the drill here. What I will say is, you look at the late round Talbot props, the finish props, they're all just awful. And it's very, very, very obvious that the books are overpricing those because they know it is the most likely path to victory and don't want everybody jumping in it. So what I'm almost equally certain of is because the books are overpricing those so much, you have probably an opportunity on over and goes the distance. I know Peyton Talbot's finished 7 of his 8 fights, I believe, professionally. But fun fact, Peyton Talbot hasn't finished a single fighter in round 1, either as a professional or an amateur. Almost all of these fights he's won via just cardio pumping guys. And obviously he could do that here, but like Giannis Gamori, he seemed pretty happy to not engage William Gomis at all. Even watching regionally, Gamori's kind of default to guys putting him in trouble is to just try to clinch him up and take them down. And so, yeah, Talbot probably is going to finish him down the stretch here. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like at plus 400 to go the distance on a guy who's going to try his hardest to not engage and wrestle if he does get engaged at men's bantamweight, that feels kind of crazy to me. So I'm interested in a poke on the GTD. I'm interested in the Talbot decision plus 500. What do you think, Evan?
I'm betting right now Talbot by decision plus 525 on Bet Online.
Yeah, that's a great
using the fight numbers fight prop finder, it's clearly better than anything else around the market. Unibet has plus 360, Bet 365 plus 350, Superbook plus 250. That seems like value.
And by the way, it's free.
It'll be a great sweat
on fight numbers. Free prop or free tool.
It's free on fight numbers. Use the fucking tools, guys. All right.
Just use fight numbers.
Yeah. To win by decision plus 525, I'll put a half a unit on that and just hope this Frenchie can survive. I did cash the under in the Cameron Simon fight, though. A lot of guys were on the over, I think. Excuse me. But Peyton Talbot is like forward. I do think this Frenchie's going to have to find some wall install, some clinching, some takedowns to extend this fight. But I don't know why he can't do that. So,
at the implied line, like you could say it should be minus 70% to end inside the distance, and you'd have a pretty good, value on that.
Exactly. So let's go Talbot by decision.
Yeah, Talbot decision. Let's ship it.
Hell yeah.
Romanov was minus 2,500. I did not realize that.
Oh, Chase Sherman. Yeah.
Moving on, though. We got a fight that I have an opinion on here, or that I have a bet on here. We got Charles Jordane taking on Gene Silva, however you say it. I bet Jordane at minus, I want to say minus 114-ish, something like that. He's minus 110 right now. I think Silva's a pretty good prospect. He obviously, great hardware, very fast, a lot of power, throws hard. I think this is a bit of too big of a step up for him, though, for this price to make a lot of sense. Something I noticed with Silva is, he does throw in combination, but he tends to either plant or blitz to do it. Like, he's not cutting you off to do it. He's kind of getting you into a phone booth. And that's been pretty easy against, the level of competition he's fought for the most part. Against Vallejos on Contender Series, you actually saw Vallejos have his way with him early in that fight, just via movement. And you saw Silva struggle tremendously, but then obviously Vallejos started to slow when he took over. In Charles Jordane, he's getting a guy with 12 UFC fights. Jordane's not even particularly old. I think he's like 28 or 29. Very, very good athlete. He's almost certainly the best athlete that Silva has fought in the UFC to date. Certainly the best striker that Silva's ever fought by a large margin. And I just kind of think it's one of these fights where, all the stuff and those big wide combos that Silva throws inside that Silva's used to being effective are going to be a lot harder against a much more seasoned striker than anything he's ever seen before. On top of which, I think Silva himself is quite vulnerable to getting hit. And so, yeah, I mean, Jordane's got almost 2x the experience. He's been in the UFC forever. He's fought an insanely high level of competition here. And honestly, pretty much every time Jordane has stepped down in competition, he has dumpstered guys. And now he's fighting. Do I expect him to dumpster Gene Silva? No, but I feel like given the level of athlete Jordane is, the striking experience he has, the grappling experience he has, I just feel like you've got to price Jordane in like the 55 to 60% range here. So I'm in on Jordane to win 1.5 units. Evan, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't hate it. I haven't done enough tape on Silva. I have to tape him. I haven't finalized my thoughts yet, but just from a market perspective, like Jordane is 28 years old. I checked, which seems crazy. Guy's been around for a while. Opened up at minus 200, and it's just been nonstop one-way action, money coming in on Gene Silva. And like, why? Because he knocked out Weston Wilson.
Right.
I mean, I could definitely get behind Charles Jordane at this price. Jordane's never a guy that I like to really lay a lot of chalk on because he's not a guy who's going to implement a grappling heavy game plan. He kind of fights on some thin margins, but he's dangerous. He's a good striker. I thought he beat Shane Burgos. That was a very close fight. He's got a good guillotine. He's got, for sure, a lot of ways to win a fight at the UFC level, and he's got a ton more experience. So, yeah, I could definitely see myself entering in on a position on Charles Jordane. I just have to tape Gene Silva a little bit more. That's it. Lags?
I'm going to be betting Jordane, honestly, just waiting on it to potentially flip because it honestly looks like it is going to flip to dog Jordane. And I expect it to honestly be just a crazy goes the distance war where I do favor Jordane. I favor the diversity of strikes. Obviously, like you guys have both mentioned, higher level of competition. It's kind of just an easy no-brainer step down, buy low for Jordane.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on. Interesting fight here. I think, I don't know if you have a bet here, Evan, but I recall us talking about this the other day. We got Andre Fely taking on Cub Swanson. Fely minus 250, comeback on Cub plus 210. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I love Fely here. It's obviously very, very juiced now. I'm not a sniper of opening lines, but in this case, I did get like $600 down on Andre Fely minus 155. And then I bet it a little bit more at minus 191 and tipped that one at Fight Numbers. I think Cub is ancient and he hates getting hit. You can hurt him to the legs. You can hurt him to the body. You can hurt him to the head. He's a coach now. He's a manager. I also like the under, though. I also bet the under. I think the under at plus money, right? Where are we sitting at with the under right now?
I think it's like pick 'em now.
Oh, yeah. I got minus 125. Or no, what did I do? I did fight ends inside the distance minus 135, which I like as well. Fely's also chinny. And Cobb, for all of his flaws at 40 years old, in my opinion, he's a very flawed fighter. I think he lost to Dawodu. Dawodu has no power. Fely has power, but Fely also can get chinned. He doesn't have the best, head movement or striking defense. And Cub Swanson, he's going to throw from the hips. He's going to stand in the pocket and throw. So I definitely like this fight to end by knockout. I just think that Fely's the one who knocks out Cub. So I have a lot of money on Fely, and I also am entering in on the doesn't go the distance. I just think that Cub's like fully checked out, and I just think he's totally washed. Whereas Fely, obviously, is a bit chinny at this point, but he's not washed yet. What's he, 32 years old? He's got a lot more, 33, a lot more left in the tank, in my opinion. He's a big guy for the division. I think takedowns are there if he wants them, but I don't know if he's going to really look to do that. I think Fely rolls here, but I give Cub a puncher's chance for sure.
Lags, what do you think?
I think Fely should be a sizable favorite to Evan's point as well. I do think the takedowns will be there if he wants to. On the feet, I think the length and the power of Fely, I think there's both strong advantages for him. I mean, to your point, I don't really disagree that he's not chinny, but it's like, I bet Brito in that spot against him where he knocked him out, he's plus 220. I mean, Brito's absolute physical tank early, and Dan Ige is a big hitter too. So
yeah, I honestly was planning to bet Cub before I taped it, just because in my head I was like, Fely, I mean, he's been hurt a bunch. He's been knocked out in 2 of his last 4 fights. And I remember Cub beating Dawodu, and I was like, he probably didn't deserve to beat him, but also I feel like stylistically Dawodu was probably a bit worse than Cub is for him. But like going back and watching it, it's kind of weird because, I mean, a couple years ago, we saw Fely, go down to 135 and just look like an absolute corpse against Jonathan Martinez. And he looked washed in that fight. And then rewatching the Dawodu fight.
Cub, right? Talking about Cub?
Cub, sorry. Yeah, Cub. Yeah. Watching the Dawodu fight, he really didn't have the same degree of success I recalled him having. It was really more of like a moment-to-moment type fight where, he was basically getting pieced for the first 9 minutes and then hurt Dawodu bad with like 10 seconds left in round 2. And then was mostly low volume round 3. And he just like bum rushed him and took his back with like 10 seconds left in the round. I felt like on rewatch, all he really had was that kind of overhand right. It was just like jab, overhand right. And that was it. And that was a year, I think 14 months ago around that. So, it's been a while. There's basically no way at his age with what we've seen, you can't project further regression at this point. And so as much as Fely getting hurt by Wood and getting knocked out by Brito and Ige concerns me, it's like Brito and Ige are both huge hitters. The Wood fight was a crazy war. I think Cub could hurt him and finish him, but I tend to think that's probably the path for him. It's really, I don't think he can out-wrestle Fely here. I think if anything, Fely could probably out-wrestle him. I don't think he can really out-jab Fely. I think Fely we've seen still has his speed, whereas Cub, you can tell it's pretty much all gone. So yeah, I think Fely minus 250 is interesting. I was kind of interested in the under early in the week when it was plus money, but now it's like, whatever. I lean Fely. I think he's probably a deserved. I think minus 70% or whatever for Fely is probably fine in the spot. Moving on, kind of an interesting fight here. Lags, curious what your thoughts are. We got Joe Pyer. He's coming back off his first UFC loss to Jack Hermanson. He's a minus 270 favorite. He's taking on Marc-Andre Barriall to plus 230. What do you think? Any value on the dog?
No, I think it honestly should be a good Pyer bounce back, honestly. But I think what a lot of people will be talking about in this fight specifically will be just the power of Pyer on the feet and just, the potential durability of Barriall just getting knocked out. But I personally think the wrestling is more so the talking point. I think we've seen Barriall grounded so many times by much lesser wrestlers that I think Pyer should have no issue winning 2 of the 3 rounds via wrestling. But I do think on the feet, like I mentioned, I think he can very well knock him out.
Yeah, I bet Hermanson big against Pyer, like plus 200. But and like before I looked at this, I'm like, maybe it's a decent spot for Barriall. The guy does have crazy cardio, pushes a pace, can maybe break him down the stretch. But honestly, I really don't think so. Jack Hermanson is like a guy who's been in the round forever. He's been a top 10 fighter for like 5 years. That was just a giant step up. Marc-Andre Barriall is basically entirely reliant on trying to gas his opponents out. And something that kind of stuck out to me is, the last time he faced a guy with decent power was in his last fight with Chris Curtis. And in that fight, you really didn't see – you saw Barriall was kind of nervous about the power early, and he didn't get out of first gear till round 3 of that fight, really. And when he's at distance, he's just so slow, man. Like, he's not a bad, technician, but he's so slow. He's kind of easy to hit because of that. And he's fighting a guy in Pyer who's just bigger. He's longer. He's a lot faster. And I also kind of think given Pyer, there's probably a big strength disparity here. I don't think even if Barriall gets him into the clinch, he's going to be able to kind of hold him there and really just unload on him the way he has on some guys. I think Piper's probably going to be able to shuck him off pretty easy. And so with that being the case, I kind of think it's going to be target practice for Pyer, at least early. I could see Barriall coming on down the stretch in this fight, like if it gets to round 3. But I kind of think Pfeiffer's going to ice him. I'm kind of interested in the under at -130, just since like every Pyer fight's had like a 1.5 that's been like pick or worse. And now he's fighting a guy with 0 defense who's slow, he can basically just touch up at will, and it's -130. That kind of seems a little silly to me. I might bet the under here, but I think Pyer really should win this fight. What are your thoughts, Evan?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think Pyer, this is a good spot for him here to get right. Jack Hermanson kind of gave him a vet lesson last time out. Hermanson has a way of doing that to guys. You know, he moves a lot. He pumps a lot of volume. Barriall's just kind of like stationary, doesn't really move laterally, likes the dirty box and stuff. And I think that's just going to lend itself to Pyer landing big shots in the pocket. Pfeiffer's huge, bro. Do you remember we saw him in Atlantic City? Like he's just casually walking by. His fucking back is like, he is gigantic. Massive, dude. He is gigantic in person. I think it's a bad fight for Marc-Andre Barriall. Like maybe he wins round 3 here if it gets extended, because obviously Pyer, slowed down against Jack Hermanson. But I also think that fight against Jack Hermanson, given where Pfeiffer's at in his career, is going to make him better. Like I think that's the kind of fight. Guy seems to have a great.
He went for the kill early, He was just used to it coming.
Right, exactly. So I do expect kind of an improved version here, and I think that Pyer should roll. I Pyer by KO maybe if I was going to play it, but I think I'll just probably pass on the fight. But I definitely like Pyer. I think that the chalk is pretty deserved here.
Yeah, I agree completely. Moving on, interesting fight here. This is a fight that it seems like everybody wants to take a stance on, and personally, I it's the kind of fight that I have been willing to take stances on in the past that I'm trying to avoid doing so in the future. Just a leak in my game. We got Ian Gary. He's taking on Michael Paige. Current price Gary -155. Comeback on Paige +155 or +135. I don't know. I think it's a close fight. I think you can probably lean the Gary side on youth, power, and potential grappling upside, but I don't know. Like, Michael Paige, he's kind of happy to just get into these like staring contests with guys, and I kind of think that's what's going to happen here, and the market's saying that's what's going to happen here. I mean, the current price on the over 2.5 is -205, goes the distance is -180. I just kind of think it's going to be pretty low volume. Like, I guess I trust Gary's leg kicks a bit more, and his, probably trust his chin a little bit more. Actually, no, I don't trust Gary's chin more. They got knocked out by Son Kanan. Never mind. But I do think, I think it's just hard for me to get behind Paige. I bet Holland against him, and I hate fading somebody and then turning around and betting on them in their next fight, especially off a performance like that. I feel like Paige would probably be like +200 here had this fight been made prior to the Holland fight, but instead he got a guy in Holland who has always relied on athleticism but no technique, and he just destroyed him. Now he's fighting a pretty good technician. I kind of think the market's probably overstating that. But also, I mean, how many guys have blown away Michael Paige on the feet? Not many. So Eileen Gary, all of this is to say Eileen Gary, it's a very high liquidity fight. I feel like the market's probably being pretty efficient here. I don't have much of a take. What do you think, Evan?
I actually hate the matchup. I think it's going to absolutely suck.
Damn.
I think both guys are I think it's going to be a staring contest. I could see Ian Gary like taunting him, like, come on, bro, let's fight, and he's just, I hate the matchup. I cashed on Michael Venom Page last time out against Kevin Holland. More so that was to me kind of, you can't trust ever Kevin Holland to like stick to a game plan. I don't know. If anything, I think to me, it's Michael Venom Page or pass +135 right now on Bet Online, but I really don't even care about this fight. I think it's going to suck. I think they did a really shit job of matching these two guys up. I'd be shocked if this was a fun fight. That's all, So Lax,
they should really only give Paige like action fighters. We all know he's never winning a title. Give
right
guys are going to come for him.
Yep. Well, starting off on that, like talking about title run, our buddy Stein might have said that MVP might be fighting for a title in a couple of years, and I personally disagree with that. I mean, I don't even see any matchup in the top 5 where it's like super favorable. But no, I mean, to Evan's point, yeah, I mean, I don't care about this fight. I expect it to be boring. I only would enter the fight if Paige blew out to plus 150. Other than that, it's a pass.
I do not see Gary sub. Honestly, I've seen a bunch of
No.
people call for that, dude. I feel like a Gary sub is almost entirely club and sub reliant. Like we've seen Michael Paige with much better grapplers than Ian Gary on top of him get nowhere near subbing him. I don't see it unless Paige is horribly compromised. Moving on though, banger here. Mayra Bueno Silva, Macy Chassan. Evan, I'll start with you. I think you and I are on opposite sides, but at very, very, very different numbers from one another. What are your thoughts there?
So I'm free rolling this fight. I had a unit on Macy at plus 170, and then I just went with the same stake on Mayra Bueno Silva at plus 100. So if Macy wins, I'll win like 0.7 of a unit. Otherwise, I'm just, break even on the fight. I just thought that the line opened like way too wide. I think Macy's absolutely huge. She's got 6 inches of reach. She's 5 inches taller. She's absolutely massive, and she's got pretty good wrestling for WMMA standards. Like I thought she looked pretty good against Big Norm. She was on her way to beating Irene Aldana before that like meme, up kick, if you will. Took care of Panny, but she's sloppy. She's very sloppy, dude. She's sloppy in transitioning on the ground, in transitioning just in general. Her striking is sloppy, and Mayra is dangerous. Where not a lot of chicks are dangerous in the way that she is. Like she'll snatch up an arm if you leave it out there. She's got a bit of power on the feet. She'll take your neck. So I definitely think that Mayra probably puts her in some really bad spots. So I was happy just to free roll this one, and I think that you're on Mayra, John.
Yeah.
So
what do you
John,
think?
I was saying, John, you go ahead first. I'll go last here since I don't have a bet on the fight.
Yeah, I bet a unit on Mayra minus 110 and then a unit at plus 100. I made her like minus 140 here. So like I honestly early on when the line first dropped, I was like, I'm probably going to end up playing Macy, and then the line crashed. And now it's like gotten to the point where I feel like everybody's looking at the fact that Mayra has been controlled in the past and that Macy can wrestle, and no one's considering that like, yeah, I mean, Macy could finish her. Like, she could head kick her or something, I guess. But Mayra is historically very durable. I see almost no grappling equity finish. Like, not grappling equity, but a finish via grappling for Macy. Evan touched on it, but, like, Macy is, dude, she is super sloppy. Like, she almost got subbed, like, 3 times by Aldana. And Aldana is not a very good jiu-jitsu player at all. And now she's taking on a woman in Mayra who's one of the most dangerous finishers in the division. So I think to start off, I think there's a huge gap in finishing equity, which I kind of knew going in, but I was like, can Mayra really win a decision? But then I'm taping it, and like you watch the fight with Raquel, or you watch both their fights with Raquel, and Raquel kind of bodied Macy in the clinch a good amount in that fight. And you watch Raquel and Mayra, and until Mayra slowed down in the later rounds of that fight, she was holding her own in those positions. She got Rocky down from the clinch. She got her back 3 times in that fight. So, like, I am not really at all sure that Macy can attack this into the clinch and not end up getting either reversed on the mat or subbed, or end up with Mayra cage pushing her and taking her back. Strike, I actually think I honestly think one of the best potential paths for Macy, Evan mentioned it, but, Mayra can be a bit sloppy and she's giving away a lot of reach, and she can be a bit arrogant in how she fights. I think if Macy was smart, she'd kind of just hang out on the outside and try to just, like, kick and move in the big cage, because Mayra is shit at cutting off the cage, for being honest. But I don't really trust her to do that. And I thought Mayra against Holm she fought with a lot more intent and was a lot more offensively minded in that fight and in pursuing like pressure. And so I look at the fight and I feel like, yeah, Macy has a process edge in this fight, but Mayra is unequivocally, in my opinion, she's not the better wrestler, but she's a better grappler. She's a much more likely to finish. And if they end up striking, Macy could point her, but I feel like Mayra is going to probably land the harder shots. And I mean, after all of this, she was just minus 200 against Raquel Pennington. And now she's just about pick 'em with Macy Chassan. So yeah, I mean, I think if you got on the early, like 160 to 180 Macy range, that's probably a decent bet. But I think Mayra should be somewhere in like the 57 to like 60% range here. Yeah, I have like 2 units on her here. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think with the price coming in, I'm probably also going to enter Silva for a small bet myself, just because I think both on the feet and on the ground, I don't trust Macy to stay safe. Like on the feet, I think Mayra hits way harder, and on the ground, I don't trust Macy to stay stay safe in top control there. What's kind of bugging me and just kind of like why I haven't played Silva is I don't think her cardio is great. And like you touched on a little bit in the striking, she can be a little bit just plotty and kind of staring at you and not landing a ton of volume. So again, not going to be a huge bet for me. Probably just a small 1-unit shot.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving on, we have a comedic late replacement here. We got Anthony Smith taking on Roman Dolidze. Roman's moving all the way up to 205 for this fight. The always gassy Roman. I'm actually kind of curious to see what he looks like on the scales here. Just, given, the guy's been at 185 his whole career. Current price, Dolidze minus 138. The comeback on Smith plus 118. What are your thoughts here, Evan?
I think this fight's absolutely electric. And I typically just hate Anthony Smith fights in general. Like, I fucking hate when I see him on the card. I think his fights generally suck. But this fight is awesome. We talked a little bit before the show about how Roman Dolidze broke our heart against Jack Hermanson, and that was the biggest meme finish I've ever seen in my entire life, just to trap him with that calf slicer. Hermanson looks like he's ready to coast. Like, even in relining that fight, if they were to run that back, Hermanson's a massive favorite. But Dolidze, he's got these weird meme powers, and he can win some fights. I thought he beat Marvin Vettori, if we're being honest.
Same.
He's a tough guy. He's dangerous on the mat, obviously. This is up at 205, though, right? So, this guy fought Laureano Staropoli, did he not? Like, am I right or wrong about that?
Yeah.
Very.
Like, he's fought some pretty small guys. Obviously, he did not look good against Imavov, but that's a horrible fight for him. I thought he looked okay against Vettori. He fights Hawes, he fights Dawkins. Anthony Smith, I think we agree here, and I like overs here. Over 2.5 or goes the distance. I'm trying to picture how this fight finishes. Now, Anthony Smith isn't really good at anything anymore. Like, obviously, we know he's a capable grappler. He got that guillotine win over Vitor Petrino in his last fight. Seemed like a gift there. I like overs in Anthony Smith fights in general because he's an elite. Like, to me, his best skill set is just surviving. Like, he's a great turtle. Like, he just does really well to not take too much damage to the point where the refs are trying to stop the fight. But I also think he might win this fight. Like, he's, just stylistically how these guys match up. Well, I guess they have the same reach, which is interesting. These guys are the same age.
Which is crazy.
Same month, 1988. Wow.
And
that
Smith
is crazy.
got 56 fights.
Holy shit. Yeah, I don't know. I like an over play. I'm going to pick Anthony Smith to win the fight. And how does Anthony Smith win this fight inside the distance? Only if Dolidze completely gasses and Anthony Smith gets his back,
Late
I would
sub.
assume.
Yeah.
Late sub. So I don't know. I like an overplay. I think this fight's kind of electric, and I actually really like it.
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, so we talked about this fight right before we got on here, and I like the over 2.5 as well at minus 120. We're talking about the finishing equity in general in the fight. I personally think it's mostly a Roman early KO. Like, Smith could sub him late in the fight, but I personally think Roman KOing him is the most finishing equity that you're fading here. So I like the over.
I like the over too, but like we said beforehand,
yes,
it seems way too obvious,
I know.
Like,
what are we missing?
So I like it.
It's what I will say. So, like, I kind of want to bet Smith because, like, with you, Evan, it's like I kind of think he's gonna win too. But the one thing that scares me is, like, I bet him against Petrino, but I don't think that was a particularly predictive outcome. And going back in time with Smith over the last few years, he has had some really, really fugly performances, man. Like, the Walker fight was hideous. Even his last, the win against Spann. Ryan Spann, if you clear a round, you should not be going life or death with that guy. And Smith literally almost lost the last 2 rounds of that fight, to give the fight away.
Yeah.
He looked slow. He looked like he was moving in molasses, and then we saw the same thing against Khalil Roundtree. I bet him against Roundtree. It's my Khalil Roundtree plus 200 against Anthony Smith. That's ridiculous. And he just looked slow and like an old man. And so I kind of think he is just an old man. Evan, you mentioned the same age, but yeah, he's got 56 fights versus Roman's 15 or whatever. Obviously, he's been finished a million times, but has been a good survivor at 205. So like that's why I'm with you guys on the over. I do think I really struggle to see Roman just back clinching him for 15 minutes. I find that like really hard to believe that he's going to be able to do that or get like real top time without putting himself in danger. But I just worry that Smith is past it. And I guess that would be kind of the case for me for this fight finishing is either Roman death gasses and gets subbed late, or Smith just eats a big right hand and just melts because, you know, at some point everybody dies. So I do like the over though. I feel like it's going to be low volume. I think after 7 minutes, it's going to be a very ugly clinch fest between these two guys. So sign me up for the over. Sign me up for the GTD. Maybe sign me up for Anthony Smith. We'll see what the line move does. Moving on. This is – I'll go first here, even though you guys are both on the other side of me here.
So it makes sense that you should go first anyways, John.
Hey, I could cheat here since I control the floor right now and set up a last, but I won't. We got Brian Ortega. He's taking on Diego Lopez. The current price, Lopez minus 139. Comeback on Ortega, plus 119. Lopez, obviously a very, very promising prospect. He's probably, honestly, one of, if not the most dangerous fighters at 145 pounds. Big power, nasty submission game. Huge for the division. And obviously he has, after his short notice fight with Movsar Evloev, he's taken care of everybody else he's fought in under 90 seconds. So fairly impressive. What concerns me with Lopez, though, is I think, you know, despite being as offensively minded as he is, I feel like he's going to struggle bad with guys that can actually fire offense back without getting hurt or finished. You know, we kind of saw that a bit with Evloev, though Evloev obviously is one of the best featherweights in the world. But, you know, we've seen it in a lot of his fights before. You know, Diego Lopez has a ton of finishes in his career, but every fight in his career that's gone past a round, he's 6-6 in those fights. He's 1-4 by decision. He's 0-3 in his last 3 decisions. And he's fighting a guy in Brian Ortega, who himself, not the best minute winner historically. Actually, I mean, obviously almost like a mirror match. Both guys kind of have relied on similar attributes to win fights. But I just kind of trust that Ortega's done it at a higher level. You know, Ortega, we know the guy can take a shot. Although I will say, you know, the reason I'm only playing 2 units on Ortega here and not going bigger is I do have some concerns that chin is finally cracking. But I mean, if they just throw down, I kind of think it's a competitive fight to even lean Ortega just because I like that he throws straight a bit more than Lopes, who tends to fire big hooks. I tend to think Ortega has a bit more grappling upside if he pursued it, although I don't really think he will. But ultimately, I kind of view it as a close fight. I feel Lopez is pretty unlikely to finish him with as much ease as he finished Tucker, Sabatini, and Yusuf. And I think as the fight extends, you know, we have a guy in Ortega who has been, you know, very, very deep with some really elite talent in this division. And he's fighting a guy in Lopez who has struggled in deep fights with guys like Joe Anderson Brito, who's obviously good, don't get me wrong, Brito, but then lost the decision like Nate Richardson. You know, the guy has had some issues in extended fights. So at the end of the day, I'm backing the guy who's been fighting the much higher level here, the guy who, you know, he's still only 33, even though his chin admittedly could be going. The guy who I think is the better boxer and the guy who I think is more likely to get the top position here. I made Ortega like a minus 110-ish here. I have 2 units on him at plus 130. Evan, hit me with why you love Diego Lopez here.
Okay. I think I get your points about, you know, Brian Ortega has fought the better strength of schedule, obviously. He is, to me, a battered man. And physically, emotionally, mentally, he's not the same guy that we saw several years ago. You know, winning a 25-minute boxing match against Korean Zombie. Otherwise, what has he done in the last 4 years? He's 1-1 with Yair. One of the fights, which was my second biggest bet of all time, was on Brian Ortega to beat Yair Rodriguez first fight. And he fucking dislocates his shoulder as Yair is attacking an armbar, which is supposed to, like, you know, attack the elbow. He has had multiple surgeries to repair this issue that he has with chronic shoulder instability. That shit doesn't just go away. And I'm not saying that it's like, oh, he's going to dislocate his shoulder this fight. My point is, they're fighting in a cage. You have to, like, as a professional athlete, train at a certain level to compete at this level. And I don't know that he can still do that. He's alluded to retirement. A lot of this is very narrative based, and I get that. But also the objective facts are this guy's had he's not active. Why is he not active? Because he's having all these surgeries. He's pretty open about like, yeah, I'll fight every year and a half because in between fights, I'm getting another surgery. He keeps getting surgeries. He's talking about like, if I'm already moving like a 60-year-old now, what am I going to actually move like when I'm 60 years old? He's got kids. I don't think he's still built for this shit. Whereas I look at Diego Lopez, who's fucking built for this. Okay, I get in extended fights. I understand his record and decisions. He's 29 years old. He lives in the gym. He's probably on some really good Brazilian Mexican supplements. Fighters can improve, and this guy to me is improving. I don't want to get too hung up on what he did as a regional fighter or his contender series fight against Joanderson Brito. I think Joanderson Brito beat the shit out of Brian Ortega. I think Brian Ortega is being overrated for largely getting his shit pushed in by Alex Volkanovski and Max Holloway. In the last 4 years, he's 1-3. And the one win is over Yair Rodriguez, who I would argue is like in the top 10 in featherweight, the one single guy who's tailor-made for Brian Ortega. In that fight, he was officially knocked down once, but he was basically dropped twice by Yair Rodriguez. So he's got this like legendary chin, but everyone has a legendary chin until they don't. Well, not everyone, but a lot of guys, right? Chuck Liddell once had a legendary chin. You know, like durability fades. He's been in wars. He's gotten the shit beat out of him multiple times. And then he's starting to get dropped in round one by Yair Rodriguez. So how would this fight be lined if they didn't rematch? Or if he got finished in round one by Yair, which like he was getting the fucking shit kicked out of him in round one. Now, in that fight, he's going up against a guy who has zero physicality, who can't stop a takedown, and really doesn't offer much on the ground. Diego Lopez is bigger than him, right? Diego Lopez is 5'11". Brian Ortega talked about moving up to lightweight. He wants to go up to lightweight. He said that he was talking with the UFC about like the September card in the Sphere fighting at lightweight because the UFC doesn't want him fighting contenders anymore. So he's like, all right, well, who am I supposed to fight? Let me go up to lightweight. I don't know, man. I just think that there's a lot of like narrative-based signs leading me to believe that Lopez is going to win this fight on Saturday. And from a technical standpoint, I do agree they're probably mirror images of each other. Neither guy's a great minute winner. Both guys are primarily boxers, but like, you know, Diego Lopez will kick legs a little bit. Lopez seems to have he might have the death touch. Like he's fucking people up. I understand Pat Sabatini, Sadiq Youssef. There were signs that these guys can't really take a good shot, but it's not like these guys are getting knocked down a lot. He's crushing these guys with like little baby uppercuts. And I think he's a fucking beast on the ground. Like he's explosive. Whereas Ortega's like a sloth. You know what I mean? Like, is he just going to take Diego Lopez up against the cage, like get an outside trip and just like grapple his way to side control and like work on a head and arm choke? That's not going to happen here against Lopez the way it did against Yair Rodriguez. If I was playing Ortega, I'd play Ortega by decision. I cannot see a Ortega finish in this fight, personally. I cannot. I also think, given that it's short notice, I think we want it. A lot of the people, perhaps, I don't know, this is just my theory, we want to cap this fight as if these guys had 2 months to prepare for each other. That's not what happened. This fight was put together 2 weeks ago.
And as if Ortega's in his prime. Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree.
Well, even if this was booked 2 months ago, I would be capping it differently than I am right now, because there, you know, the way we cap fights, you try to assign percentages, probabilities, right? We know what we're doing. It's not like I'm capping this as if they're going to fight 100 times, and they've had 2 months to prepare. No, they've had 2 fucking weeks to prepare. I'm factoring that in here. I think that dramatically favors Diego Lopez, who lives in the gym. Literally, he beat Sadiq Youssef like 2 months ago, and then 10 days later, he's training, helping Alessandro Costa get ready for his fight. Or does Ortega is he grinding in the gym? Like, I think he probably rolls jiu-jitsu 2 or 3 times a week, with whatever that Gracie fella is. I just don't know that he's still built for this. And I don't know. I think he's hittable as fuck. He's like a punching bag on the feet. I think Lopez is going to hurt him early. I have a max fucking Diego Lopez. 5 units. Minus 130 and minus 135. I feel really, really good about it. I just think that there are so many signs telling you that Ortega is much closer to washed than in his prime. And I would not be shocked if he comes out looking like an absolute sloth, punching bag, disinterested. And I think Lopez could absolutely smash. Sorry if that was long-winded.
No.
No, you're good. Good.
I do that every week.
Yes. No,
Lex, what do you got here?
I'm not going to echo a ton of the same points that Evan made, but I do have 2.8 units on Lopez as well at -140. And on top of the narrative points that he had made, the physical points to me in this fight are huge for Lopez. Much longer, much taller, much faster, and like Evan mentioned, much more durable in my opinion as well. Yeah, I like the Lopez side as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is the MMA Twitter Civil War of the week.
John,
someone will win here, unless they have a draw, in which case no one will lose. So, someone will have or not.
What's interesting, I'm really curious to know what Pepe Silva has to say about this fight. He's been like MIA all week. I know he's alive because he'll like a tweet every now and then, but he's been like pretty much radio silent all week. And obviously, he got that tattoo, the dream, believe, and make it happen.
Yep,
he did.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
it's on his thigh.
Yeah.
All right. That would be. I saw you put tattoo bet in our group chat, and I was just like, I'm not ready to do that.
Had a tattoo. Nah, I don't want to do like that. I was like, I would have done it. I would have got the tattoo. We're better's bet. I'm a man of my word. I'm glad he did it. I no doubts he would do it.
Yeah.
But I really want to know where he stands on this fight, because obviously he's not super high on Diego. He was pretty confident that Sadiq Youssef was going to come in and give him a UFC vet lesson there, but I think he might have come around on him, on his aura. Never bet against aura. So
I will say this: I like Ortega this week. I do have a storied history of burning money fading Diego Lopez, though. I did bet 3 units on Pat Sabatini.
See, we're the opposite. I've been on this train for a while. Gavin Tucker. We've probably been fucking bickering in Marshall's.
Yeah, I bet Tucker.
Yeah,
I bet Tucker too. But I didn't bet him against the other two, and Pat or Sadiq.
I bet him in his last 3, and I was really big on him over Sadiq, and I'm huge on him here. So hopefully I'm not giving it all back, but we'll see.
We will see.
So, John, real quick before we move to the main event, are you trying to do a shot bet on the co-main event?
Well, I owe you 2, and I was supposed to do them tonight, but my stomach is fucked, and I have
3, John.
Yeah, I have 3. I'm not allowed to drink till Friday because I've had diverticulitis, which has been awful.
Ooh, damn.
But I'm back on Friday, so the next show I will be doing 3 shots.
Potentially 4.
Potentially 4. Oh, well, you want to do a shot bet on this fight?
Yeah, co-main event. Yeah,
sure. I can't get much worse than 4. So. Moving on, we got the main event. Alex Poatan Bajeda taking on Jiri Prochazka. Current price, Poatan -140, Jiri +120. Honestly, Jiri seems the obvious side, but also, I don't know. So, like, my recollection of their first fight had been Pereira was starting to slow down and Jiri was taking over. But then I rewatched the fight and I'm not really sure that's like what was actually happening. Pereira actually seemed kind of fresh in like their second to last grappling entanglement before he knocked him out. And I just have a hard time thinking about how this is going to go because on the one hand, I think it's pretty obvious Jiri has many more ways to win this fight. Obviously, he could knock him out standing. He could be the one grappling him. He could submit him. Whereas Poatan kind of needs his ideal fight. But at the same time, even if Jiri wants to grapple, there's 2 things that kind of stick with me. One, Jiri doesn't cover distance well enough to like avoid having big exchanges with Pereira to get inside. And I mean, the reality is we saw it in their first fight. This isn't Alexander Rakic, who he's going to be exchanging heavy with. It's a much, much harder to hit target and a much more precise counter striker. So that's concerning for me. Obviously, the leg kicks are still there. And then it's like, I don't know, man. The wrestling, I really don't trust Jiri's cardio if the game plan here is to come out and wrestle for 5 rounds. I know this isn't Glover Teixeira, but I watched this guy grapple with Glover Teixeira, and he looked dead gas 13 minutes into that fight. Now, maybe Pereira will be too, but if you tell me they're both too gassed to grapple 13 minutes into this fight, I'm probably going to back the better, much more precise striker. Am I sure that'll happen? No, but it's just a concern for me that a guy who's never really had a come out and attempt 1 million takedowns type of game plan in his career might do that. I don't think that would necessarily go the way everybody thinks it would. But yeah, I mean, I do think Jiri has more ways to win. He's younger. He's more athletic. He obviously can finish Alex on the feet. He had some success in the first fight. He won the first round. I I don't know. You just talked about Aura, Evan, and I'm like, yeah, if Jiri was Ankalaev, I wouldn't give a fuck about his Aura because I think he would just bury him on the mat. But he's not Magomed Ankalaev. And like Alex just seems, man, especially at 205, he just seems different. I can't shake the leg kicks, even though Jiri always seems to overcome it. I can't shake how open he is to hit. Ultimately, I think the line's probably right. And again, it's like a super liquid fight. Like everybody's got an opinion on it. I just don't feel the need to plant a flag. I kind of lean Alex, but what do you think, Evan?
I don't have an opinion either. I think at the number, again, I think it's accurate. I just think Jiri is very hittable and can obviously get his lights shut off. And I just think that Alex is just so good at landing his shit and putting people's lights out. I think it's just maybe I'm not going to play the fight. I think I'll just wait. And if Yuri's around in like middle of round 2 or starts round 3, just try to look for Jiri. Because I do think, obviously, I favor him as the fight gets extended. I don't know. It's such a funny fight, man. Jiri's so funny to me. Talking about like, Alex, I know that you're using like fucking shamanic magic. and I'm just going to ask you straight up. Like, is he trolling or is this like legitimately his personality? Like, I'm going to ask him, let's fight without your magic. Yeah, is he being serious? Because I think he's hysterical. I think he is. I
have never seen somebody. They stopped that fight, or probably should have was early, to be honest. The early stoppage in the first fight, and like the dude literally went full samurai. He was just like, "Congratulations, you win."
Dude, he's incredible to me. I really do enjoy Jiri Prochazka. And then I saw a tweet about like some chieftain in fucking Brazil or whatever is gonna like give some shamanic prayer towards Alex Pereira. And I feel like Jiri really has like a defeatist mentality here where he's like, I can't beat him if he has his magic. And I think Alex is like playing into that. I don't know what's going on, dude, but I just think it's hilarious. And I usually cap main events like last because I feel like weird shit always happens in main events. And typically the lines are a little bit more efficient than some of the prelims or WMMA stuff that people ignore. I think the line's probably accurate. If I had to guess, I think Alex probably does it again and just maintains his strap. But I don't know. I love both guys. So if Jiri's the champ, I think that's absolutely hysterical.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Legs? Any different take here?
No, I think it's going to be an electric fight. I don't have a strong passionate take. From the first fight, though, obviously we saw Alex land a ton of devastating leg kicks, and Jiri was figuring out a little bit here and there in that second round. But the bigger thing to me in that second round, even though Alex did end up knocking him out, like Jiri's feints in and out of range, like we're giving Alex a ton of issues trying to hit him. Like his unorthodox style gives him a ton of issues. So I do think in an extended fight, you have to favor Jiri, but I do think there's a ton of issue in the early couple rounds here. So to Evan's point, I would much rather enter live, I think, on Jiri.
Yeah, I agree. So all of us tend to agree here. Alex early, potentially Jiri late if he's still there after a few rounds. Evan, I want to thank you for joining us. Please shout out your shit, shout out fight numbers, shout out where they can find your picks.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. I was like one of your most loyal and earliest subscribers to this channel. So everybody watching the video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. These guys have been grinding for years, doing a great job. Super, super sharp guys, great guys as well. Fightnumbers.com. We do pretty well over there. If you're going to give your money to anybody, give it to cool guys like us. Chad is the intern, but he's on a fucking heater. This guy is giving out like massive Method of Victory round props every single week on the Thursday night show. We are going to do our betting show tomorrow because it's a pay-per-view card. Just free to the public. So tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, we'll do our betting show. That's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Appreciate it. Cheers, everybody.
Yeah, once again, thanks again, Evan. Guys, yeah, like Evan said, drop a like, subscribe, use the promo code CLUB on fightnumbers.com. I've hung out with all of those guys. Actually, yeah, all of them in real life at this point. All really, really cool dudes, all really sharp. Like Evan said, you can give your money to a lot of people, but a lot of scumbags in the space. Go with people who are not scumbags. And also, the live odds screen, not a whole lot better than that out there. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have fun this weekend. Good luck. Hope you make money if you're following us. If not, I hope you lose money, but good luck anyway. So take it easy, everybody. Peace. Thanks again, Evan.
Thank you, guys.